Hey guys, making a video on how to install a NukeFet. Here's the NukeFet. Big fan of these. You can get them from brillarmory.com for about 22 bucks. This video should cover most or all standard MOSFETs, 3034 base, things like that. So yeah, let's get started. This video is going to be pretty chopped up. It's not going to be one long thing because a MOSFET install takes a bit long, and I don't think you'd want to sit through all that. So it's going to be lots of parts of the video pieced together, but it should give you a good idea on how to install a basic MOSFET. So here is the NukeFet, and it comes with two motor connectors, some small heat shrink for the motor connectors in black and red for positive and negative. It also comes with one Dean's connector, which is not shown right here because I took it out of the packaging. And the MOSFET itself, with all its wiring and the separate positive wire. Here's the MOSFET unit, all of its wire. So basically we're going to show you how to wire it up, and yeah, let's get started. First, what you're going to want to do is take your new trigger contacts. You can use your old ones, just desolder the wires from them, but I'm upgrading to a new set of contacts because the old ones are pitted and worn out from the electricity from not running a MOSFET. This is not my gun. It's it used to be my gun. It used to be my KWA KM42GX, and I just sold it, and I'm installing a MOSFET for the buyer. But anyway, first what you want to do is take the bottom section of your contacts and install them into the gearbox shell. Make sure they fit. They just push down into there, and then a little screw will go right there, but we're not going to put the screw in right now. So that's what they'll look like. Also, you're gonna want to close after you wire the MOSFET in to the gearbox. You're going to want to close the gearbox. You don't have to put any screws in it. Just hold it together, put it in the lower receiver of the gun, and put the buffer tube on so you can run the wires through the buffer tube and make sure they're going to be long enough, because that's one thing you don't want, is your wires halfway down your buffer tube and not be able to get to the connector once you're all finished. That'd be quite frustrating. But to set them in the gun, you're just gonna route them just like a normal wire configuration from the back going up to here, except for this white wire is your negative battery to motor wire, and this green wire will be your positive battery to motor. And you will not have any of the larger wires going to the trigger contacts. It will be this thin blue wire, which is your negative signal wire, and then because there's way too much of this on there, you'll cut some of the excess off and splice the second signal wire into the green wire and then to the positive tab on the trigger contacts. So what I like to do is I like to wrap this wire around just to keep it kind of neat and all in one place. Just like that. You don't need to do it the whole way, because once you get it inside these grooves, you're not going to want it like that. But so I'd say about here. And I've installed a ton of these, so I kind of got the gist of where exactly to put it. You're going to want your smaller or your thinner wire on the bottom. And sorry for the crappy lighting in the room, but whatever. You're going to want the thin blue wire going across the bottom here, up and around, and then up here to your trigger contacts. And you're just going to leave it there for now. Maybe squeeze it in there so it doesn't go anywhere. So the blue wire will look like that, which is your, like I said, negative signal wire. And then your negative wire here will go out the negative side of your pistol grip, which will be on the bottom here. And then you'll take your positive wire, which actually will go under the white wire if you're routing it through here, through the front side of the pistol grip. What I like to do is I like to modify the gearbox shell to widen out the little groove where the wire goes, and send both of them down the back of the pistol grip, because then you won't have any thick wires in here across here, so then they won't get chewed up by the pinion gear, because that's a pretty big problem with lots of wiring going across here. So yeah, you don't want that happening. So I'll end up modifying the gearbox shell a little bit and splicing the positive signal wire in somewhere around here instead of over here. So mainly what you're going to want to do is just wire it so you have enough off the back to go out the buffer tube, and enough out the bottom of the gearbox so you can cut away and get the proper length to go down the pistol grip and connect to your motor. You don't want it too short and you don't want it too long. So basically we're going to try to leave the blue wire in here like that. And let me zoom in a little bit. It's probably not a very good close-up. There we go. And then you're going to want to put your green wire on top of the blue wire. Running out the bottom is how I do it. You don't have to. And then have your white wire running out the bottom as well. And your white wire will go on top of all. So it'll look like that. I might not even have to modify the shell a whole lot. I might just end up cutting a groove in the other side of the gearbox shell for this that's sticking up. But I may have to modify it. So we're going to check. That looks like enough length out the bottom and out the back. That looks like it'll be enough length for a buffer tube. So right now I'm going to cut the video, modify the shell so that the wiring will fit, and then I'll check the buffer tube assembly and see if it's long enough. Okay, I haven't modified the gearbox shell yet, but there's a couple things I do want to go over first. And I'm not going to show you how to modify the gearbox shell. All I'm going to tell you is you may need to cut at these grooves in here and this groove, but over here. Cut it deeper, wider, or you may have to cut one of the grooves on this side of the gearbox shell. Just cut one in there and it should be large enough to fit. But one thing you're going to want to do with your negative signal wire here is you're going to want to see where it meets the negative trigger contact, which is the bottom, down in there. You can see that little silver plate. That's where this wire will be soldered onto, so you're just going to want to mark the wire where it needs to be cut and cut it accordingly. And then after that, you're going to want to strip some of the silicone off of the wire, and so it'll look like this. Let's see if I can. So it'll look like that, and you're going to want to kind of twist it just to keep it all together so it won't fray apart. So just like that. And then you're going to solder that, not this one that you cut off, but you're going to solder this one onto the bottom tab on your trigger connectors, or trigger contacts. And then when this is all set up, you'll have your green wire or your positive going through here and then out the bottom, or if you really want to, you can make it go across there like that and out this side, which is what most guns have, but like I said, I prefer both coming out the back. But when this is coming through right about here, you will splice this wire into it as a positive signal wire. You'll have it coming down here around to the trigger contacts. You'll have to cut it again right here because you'll still have excess wire, and then you'll solder it to the top connector. Make sure they're a little bit they have a little bit of slack in there, just so if your trigger, when it's moving, if it rubs on them, or the safety lever here, if it moves and rubs on them, you want them to have a little bit of slack so they don't either make it so the trigger can't be pulled. So you don't want them in the way of your trigger. You want to route them so they're not in the way of your trigger, and you want them to have a little bit of slack so if your trigger or your safety lever does catch on them, you don't want the trigger or safety lever to rip the wires off of where they're soldered at. Okay, as you can see, I have the gearbox in the gun with the MOSFET in it. The MOSFET's not done being installed yet. I haven't even started soldering, but as you can see, I have plenty of length coming out the bottom for the motor wire. That will definitely have to be cut down. And I have plenty of length coming out the buffer tube. Probably cut it right about here. Just so maybe a little bit longer if I'm going to have a crane stock. If you're going to have a lipo or a buffer tube lipo, you want to cut it shorter. If you're going to have a crane stock battery, you're going to want it a little longer. But I'll take it back out of the gun and get back to you. Okay, I have my negative signal wire cut and the rubberization removed, or the rubber coating removed on the outside of the end of it, and I'm going to solder it onto this bottom metal plate on the trigger contacts. I'm not going to show you guys how to solder. That'll just take way too much more time. I might have a separate video coming in the future about how to solder, but I'm not going to cover it in this video. If you don't know how, there's a lot of great videos on YouTube on how to solder. You just have to look them up. Be right back. One more thing before I start soldering. You're going to want to get some heat shrink like this. I got this whole box of it for like $5. You can get it at Radio Shack, different hardware stores, electrical places, etc., etc. Because I like to slip heat shrink over Well, first you have to slip it over the wiring and all the way down. You don't want the heat making it shrink, so you want to have it as far down as possible, because you don't want heat traveling up the wire when you're soldering and have it just shrink right there. Also, you want your solder joint where you actually solder the wire on to cool before you slip it on, because you won't be able to get it on. But this, I'm just going to cut this red down to length, about that long, and then when the wire's soldered onto it, have it slip over the drop of solder that's there. And I usually use white or black for negative, and red will be for my positive. Alright, as you guys can see, I have the negative signal wire soldered and heat shrinked onto the negative trigger contact part. Next, I'm going to be splicing the positive signal wire into the green positive wire that you've seen, and splicing it into the green wire and running it and soldering it onto the top tab on the trigger contacts. Here's my green wire. So basically, how I'll splice it is I'll remove a small section, probably about a centimeter or less long, about from here to here, and I'll cut it out, but I won't cut it out all the way around the wire, just a top part of the wire. And I won't be cutting the wire, I'm just cutting the silicone part off of it, and then I'll take my exposed wire piece, solder it on, and let's just pretend that this well, here, let's just pretend it's all installed, and I have my green wire running through down the gun, or down through the gearbox. I'll have this spliced into it around here somewhere. And you're definitely going to want to cover that with heat shrink too. So that this will be spliced in about here. And then since it'll be spliced in right about there, then you'll have it running alongside your other signal wire, and then this one will be soldered onto the top tab there. And you're going to want them laying low in here, as low as possible, and then bring it to there, solder it on. This end will be spliced in to the green, and then after that you'll just measure and cut these, your motor wires that come out the bottom here. Get this out of the way. You'll measure and cut these inside of the pistol grip, and you'll measure to however long you want your battery wires. You'll solder your Dean's connector onto the ends of these once you get them to the length that you want them, and once you get your motor wires to the length that you want them, you'll crimp on. You'll slide heat shrink over the wire first, the heat shrink that it came with, and then you'll crimp on these little guys to connect to your motor. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, as you guys can probably tell, I am horrible at soldering. I'm not good at it, but I'm good enough. So I got that wire that I cut some of the silicone off of. I have my other wire, my positive thin wire spliced onto my positive motor wire, battery to motor wire. So after you solder them, put some heat shrink over them, apply heat with a lighter or a small torch or a small heat gun, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Hold on. Alright, I have the heat shrink on and shrunk down onto the soldering joint where my thin wire goes into my my positive thin wire goes into my other into my positive main wire. So that's pretty nice, pretty decent solder joint there. And then this will be in the gearbox shell. I'm gonna try to configure it real quick just so you guys can see what it would look like. Alright, just like that. There's where it's spliced in. This is my negative blue, and then my white negative wire will go on top of them all, probably. Right there, after I modify and widen the slots for the gearbox shell. But what I want you to see is how there's the splice where my positive signal wire, which is this one that I haven't soldered up here yet, is spliced. It runs through just like the other one and is spliced into the positive wire right here. So that'll just sit down in there and run through here, and then it will be soldered right there, cut down and soldered. So I'll be back. Alright, I have this one, my positive signal wire, soldered onto the top there. Got my heat shrink right here. I'm going to fit that real quick, if I can. So maybe you guys can see how it's done. Which I have this wire curved, so this might actually be a little bit harder than I thought, so you might not be able to see. But it just slips over. Sometimes you gotta maneuver it around a bit to get it to go over. There we go. Just like that. And then I'll take something to heat it up with. What I like to use is a small torch. I usually take the head off of my soldering torch, so it just blows a small flame at it, but my soldering torch is super hot right now, so I'm not going to touch it. So I'm going to take my trusty Zippo and use the flame from that. But I will try to do that in front of the camera. I figured I'd just show you guys. It's pretty simple. Get a flame going. You let the flame lick it. Don't really try to burn it, but it's okay if the heat shrink turns a little bit darker, like you can see here. But there's that. Next step will be I'll reroute it into the gun, or into the gearbox, and then the next step will be measuring and cutting the wires for the pistol grip and the motor wires, and I'll get to that in a minute. Alright, there's one more thing I want to mention to you guys. Also, well, as you can see, I have my wires finished up here. This one actually came disconnected, so I had to resolder it. But as you can see, they're laying nice and flat in there. I have these routed through, ready to go. I'm ready to measure and cut them for the pistol grip and all of that good stuff. All I have to do is, since they're coming out the back, through the back here, I'm going to cut a little groove, and I might cut this one a little bit wider, deeper. But the main thing I want to mention to you guys is these little tabs. There's one here and here, and there's also one here and here. But since only the thin wires are running through the front of the gearbox, you don't want to cut these two off. But these two you're going to want to cut off, because when you're upgrading to more wiring going through your gearbox or thicker wiring, what these are originally made to do is press down onto the wiring and hold it in place. But that's for the original wiring, which is only 2 strands and it's really thin. And then you upgrade to your 14 or 16 gauge wires like these are, and then you got 2 more 22 gauge wires running through, and that's just, it's all the way up to the top right now, so it's pretty thick. So these are just going to either cause the gearbox shell just not to close at all, and if you do manage to close the shell, those are just going to puncture your wiring, and you don't want that to happen. So what you're going to want to do is cut these off with a Dremel or a grinder or something. Make sure you clean up inside the gearbox, make sure there's no shavings or metal dust laying around in there. But yeah, you definitely want to cut these off. Alright, as you guys can see, I cut the tabs off, and I kind of, that was straight across, so I cut a shallow groove down into it. Normally you would only have to cut one straight down, like this one. It's not very wide. If I can get the freaking camera to focus. There we go, like that. But I made it a lot longer, just in case the wire needs to shift a little bit to the left or right off of the side of the green wire. If it needs to shift around a little bit, it allows it to do that, just because I don't want them to get pinched. Took off any burrs with some sandpaper. Still got a little bit of metal dust down in there that I need to clean out. But as you can see now, the gearbox shell will go together perfectly. Without, as you can see, it's together, and I can put the screws in it, and it's perfect. There's some wiggle room for the wire, and it's not being crushed by anything. So now you can see what it'll look like installed in the gearbox. Here's your wiring over here that will go to your Dean's connector and your battery, and then out the bottom is the wiring that will go to your motor. And just these two, remember the green is positive, so this will go to your positive side of your motor. White is negative, that will go to the negative side of your motor and Dean's connector. But all you gotta do after that is put your pistol grip on, run the wires how they should be run up the back, insert your motor, measure them, cut them, and I'll probably show you how to do that too If you can see, I have heat shrink on here because I kind of burnt the silicone sleeving on the wire, so I'm just going to put some heat shrink over it. There's no damage to the wire or anything. I just kind of blackened the white silicone, so I'm just going to put this over it and heat shrink it down just to make it look prettier. Alright, now we're working our way towards measuring and cutting everything, like the excess wire. I did have to, since the wiring's coming out the back hole on the pistol grip, all wiring comes through this hole and this hole. Normally you only have one wire through each hole with the normal wire set, and that's really thin wire. And now that we have a little bit thicker wire and two are going through one hole, we're not even using the front. I had to slightly widen this one, if you can see that, so they both fit through properly. So what you're going to do now is feed your wiring through the back as it should. Pull it, make sure it's not pinched up in there, and slide your pistol grip on and tighten it on with a screwdriver. Alright, and then after that, you want to make sure your positive wire comes up the right side and your negative comes up the left side. And you can stick your finger in there and bend them around a little bit. Make sure they do that. After you've done that, you want your positive side of your motor to go to the left, so the opposite of the positive wire. Stick it in there, make sure that it's springy, and then what you're going to want to do is the negative wire cuts across to the negative spot on the motor, the negative tab on the motor where it will connect, and then your positive will go over it and around like so to the positive on the motor. So we're gonna measure them, cut them, and just to measure them, you just want to have it about the length enough for it to go around like so and hook up right there. So we're gonna cut it right about here, and then same thing for the negative. It's gonna come straight across here and hook up right there on the negative post on the motor. Alright, as you can hopefully see, I have my negative wire cut to length. As you can see, it'll go right over to there. And I have the rubber coating cut off around it. So what you're going to do with that is you're going to slip your, well, first you want to twist the wiring a little bit, as you know, just to keep it all in place. And then you're going to slip it over. Oh, first you're going to want your heat shrink. And then you're going to slip it over the exposed wires, just like that. Kind of press it on the best you can. And then you'll crimp it on with a pair of pliers or wire crimpers, which I have to go run to my toolbox and grab. And then after that, at this joint right about here, and right about here, there's a bending point, you can see. and that'll bend at a right angle and connect right to your motor. As you can see, I have this one here. It would go about there, and I have it marked with a Sharpie, if you can see that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And then I'll strip the coating off of this wire a little bit and crimp on the other connector after I put my heat shrink on. I'll crimp on the other connector and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to crimp on one of the connectors, because I know a lot of people complain and whine when you don't show them exactly what to do and exactly how to do it. So you've stripped your coating off. You slide the connector over, and you take either a pair of wire crimpers or pliers, and that edge in there, you just slide it over. Oh, if I don't lose the connector first. Slide it on and crimp it. It's as simple as that. It's really easy, honestly. Let's crimp it on. As hard as you want it on there is fine. Probably the harder it's on there, the better, so you won't lose it, or so it won't get torn off in any way. And then after that, you're going to take your pistol grip back off. Alright, and then take your heat shrink, and this heat shrink's actually tall or wide enough to go around these connectors, so I guess you don't really have to worry about that. I guess we're gonna do the black one first. What I like to use is, like I said, my soldering torch. I just take the soldering tip off, and it makes for a perfect little device to heat shrink. Perfect. Alright, now we're going to do the same with the red heat shrink on the positive wire. I'll try to get a good shot for you guys. Alright, now you're going to place your motor back, or your grip back on. You're going to put your motor in it and see if they're long enough to attach. I'm going to put the grip on and the motor in, and I'll show you guys that in a second. Alright, and like I said before, you're going to want to bend these at a right angle, straight down. I usually use the pliers because they're pretty tough little suckers. I'm pretty happy with the connectors that Brill sends you with it, because these are very tough connectors. I have not had any snap yet, and that's a pretty big deal, is connectors snapping. motor connectors snap all the time. And I haven't had a pair of these ones snap yet. But just gonna go right over to the negative with the white negative wire. Go straight to it. Positive wire will go over that and around to the positive connection on the motor. Press it in there. Alright, now this is out of the way of where your because as you can see, there's all this reinforcement out this lip where it it's not really reinforcement, but this material all here that sticks up, that's what presses, it grabs around the motor cage, I guess you could say, keep the motor from spinning around or back and forth, and you don't want that getting pinched by you don't want your wires getting crushed by it, so you want this one to be back a little bit as it is, and you want this one to be up and over a bit, just like that. And so now there's plenty of room for your plate to go on, your motor plate. You can screw that in and it'll be perfect. So after all that's done, what you're gonna do is place your you're going to take your grip back off and your motor out, and you're going to put the gearbox all back together if you want, and put it back in the receiver of your gun. Put the buffer tube on. When the buffer tube is on, you're going to want to, let's just say this is about where the buffer tube will be. After that, like I said, if you're going to be running a buffer tube LiPo, cut it shorter and solder Deans onto it. And if you're going to have it with a crane stock battery, cut it a little bit longer, like so, and solder your Deans connectors on. I'm not going to show you how to solder Deans connectors, that should be simple enough. If you don't know what Deans connectors look like, it's these guys here. I don't think I have a female on me to show you. Yeah, I just have a couple of males. These are male Deans connectors. As you can see, these have already been soldered onto things before. But, yeah, these are male. The female just have a other plug. I believe, let me think. Actually, I can show you what a Deans connector will look like once you've soldered it and put heat shrink on. Right there. This is also on a MOSFET on one of my personal guns. Just showing you this. As you can see, this is one of my personal builds. This build is also featured in my video all about MOSFETs. Not this video. This video is how to install a MOSFET. I also have another video that explains what MOSFETs are and what they do for your gun, so go check that video out. I'll have the link in the description. But as you can see, instead of the green wire for positive, I have a positive 14 gauge wire, so it's thicker than 16 gauge, more electrical flow. And instead of a secondary blue wire that I cut off, I used a red wire just so I could tell for the other signal wire, for the positive signal wire. Just because I like to be a little more organized, but it really doesn't matter. It's just personal preference. So there's that. Nice soldered on. So yeah, check this stuff out in my other video as well. And I'll have a picture in the end of the video, possibly showing the Deans connector installed onto this one. Maybe, maybe not, being as you guys can obviously see, this would be the green wire, this would be the white negative wire. As you can see, the just so you guys know what is positive and negative on the Dean's connector. If the Dean's connector is laying flat, the one that's vertical is positive, the one that's horizontal is negative. So you guys, just so you guys know how to do that. Also, always make sure to slip your heat shrink all the way down first before you start soldering, so then you can wait for it to cool, bring it up, and heat shrink it on. But that's how to install a MOSFET, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped and was descriptive enough. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and look forward to more videos. If you have any video preferences, or you want to see a specific video on a specific topic, or how to do something specific, airsoft related, of course, let me know, and I will hopefully make that video. But yeah, just let me know, guys. Also follow me on Instagram at Airsoft and Milsim, all one word. Yeah, any questions, let me know. Thanks, guys.